Oh well, look there. There's a camera staring at me. I am not the kind of person who should be facing a camera. I have a face and a voice for blogging, but I wanted to make an attempt to reach the kind of people who don't seem to like to read. So I've been following the events at Mythcon lately. And I first have to say, no, I haven't been there, so I'm getting this very indirectly. I'm only seeing snippets of the so-called interview between Thomas Smith and Carl Benjamin, but I'm also getting enough of a gist that I can sort of tell what went down. First of all, I will confess to my sympathies. They are entirely with Thomas Smith. That when I saw the clip where Carl Benjamin was confronted with his remarks to a sexual assault victim, and he simply turned to the audience and smirked and waved his hand and got a lot of cheers and applause, he lost me. Yes, he clearly won over the audience by mocking a sexual assault victim, but he did not win me over. And that's in part why I felt compelled to make this video, is that this is a problem in the atheist movement. That we have people who are so committed to one principle, the principle of free speech, that they're willing to dismiss trivialities like the rights of women and minorities, the ability of women to attend our conferences without harassment, just in general throwing away a huge portion of our atheist audience for the right to be able to harass them. And that has to end. That's my concern. But let's be fair. I thought I would be charitable and look deeper into what these people were arguing. And so I saw further snippets from the conference. There have been some videos that have already come out from partisans of Carl Benjamin. I've read some of their remarks on Facebook and Twitter. And I tried hard to see where they're coming from. And I can sort of see what they're worried about. That what's going on here is there's a concern that what the SJWs, people like me, are trying to do is coerce them. We're trying to force them to behave in a certain way. We're trying to commit society to force them to behave in a certain way. We're trying to shame and punish them for their preferences. And when you put it that way, it sounds kind of horrible. I'll agree with you that, yeah, that if you've got an organized social movement that is trying to dictate to you how you should live your life, then that's a problem. That's something that has to be opposed. Okay, so I pondered that for a while, and then I came to the conclusion, I'm forced to confess that they are exactly right. As one of those social justice warriors, I do want to coerce them. I do want to force them to do certain things. I want them to abide by certain rules. So they're, in a sense, yeah, I'm actually saying they're right. But the thing is that what I want them to stop doing is I want them to stop feeling like they have the right to rape people. I know most of them have no interest in rape. But I also want them to stop feeling like it's a legitimate silencing tactic to try and intimidate people with rape threats. And many of them do that. Carl Benjamin does that. And I consider that to be grossly wrong and that we need to oppose that. And I am indeed willing to encourage society to develop rules and methods for preventing people from continuing this kind of ghastly behavior. Now, the question is that a bad thing? Is this intolerable that someone would think that society should compel individuals within that society to abide by the rules of the society. And I don't think it is. I'm sorry, if you are benefiting from the privileges of living in that Western civilization you love so much, then you should be willing to abide by the rules of that civilization. That it's fairly straightforward that no, you should not rape people. You will go to prison for that sort of thing. Well, we hope you would go to the prison for that sort of thing. But further, we would rather that in our society it was civil and that you weren't threatening a significant proportion of that population with threats of sexual harassment. It's not just women. It's when you make a joke about people being sent to prison and getting sodomized in prison. That's the same deplorable behavior that we should all oppose. Neither men nor women should be raped, and we shouldn't try to compel their behavior by threatening to rape them. Yeah, it's a pretty basic thing, isn't it? This is the way society should work. So further, I want to see things like a more egalitarian society where all people have equal rights and responsibilities and opportunities. And if that means undermining the privilege of the wealthy by pointing out the unfairness of their position, or if it means reminding white people like myself that we are benefiting a great deal from our historical position in society, then I'll do so. I think we should do so. I think we have an obligation to constantly remind ourselves where we came from and how we got here. So I will shame people for applauding white nationalists or cheering for misogynists or silently standing by even to enable discrimination. And I don't think I'm out of line to do that. So I believe in a social contract that if you benefit from the shared values of a community, then you're obligated to abide by the core rules of that community. Now, there are exceptions. I got to point these out. As an atheist in a predominantly Christian society, of course I'm going to kick back against some of the rules that are trying to constrain me. And you should feel the same way too. If there are truly oppressive rules, then yes, you also have a moral obligation to oppose them. So, for example, here's the deal. I'm an atheist. I'm going to push against those boundaries. So I'm willing to blaspheme because I think blasphemy is not a crime, and I think everyone ought to have the right to choose their own religion, or no religion at all. So I will directly act to undermine that rule of society. But what I see going on in the atheist community now is not so much that, is that some atheists are fighting for the right to bully women with rape threats. And they're complaining about things like consent. They're complaining about things like rules of conduct at conferences. And I know the reasoning. I understand where you're coming from. You're trying to say that in the name of the sacred free speech, holy of holies, we have to allow this right to harass women, because if we start restricting that, the next thing you know, they're going to tell us that we can't vote or something. That there's a slippery slope argument hiding in there. But aren't there better ways to advance that goal of freedom of speech than to, for instance, join Carl Benjamin in brigading a victim of sexual assault with further taunts about rape? It seems to me that that's not directly advancing the cause of free speech. It's you fighting for your right to harass people. And that's not a productive way to go about this kind of thing. So again, in the spirit of charity, I'll assume that it's not your goal at all, that you don't want to go out there and taunt women with rape. Okay? I'm being very generous here because Everything I see says, no, that's not necessarily true. But okay, let's assume that. That's what you want to do. In which case, shouldn't you be rethinking your strategies? That what's happening now is that your crusade for free speech looks far more like a crusade for misogyny. How about if you back off on that and instead decide to fight for some other free speech rights, which you will find that a majority of atheists are happy to join you in doing. It's just when you start fighting for the right to treat women like chattel, or to discriminate against minorities, or to throw immigrants out of the country, then you're not fighting for rights other than your right to oppress. Okay, that's enough of an exercise for me in this camera thing. I don't know if I'll do it again, but talk to you later.